Welcome to our new segment of the K&D podcast series called the K&D Extras. Each week, either myself or David will be carrying out a solo episode where we pick an album for ourselves that we're familiar with, we turn the mic on, and we talk our shit. Alongside our regular exchanges every Tuesday, we will be dropping these extra episodes every Thursday. As usual, we appreciate you as a listener, and you can continue to show your support by following us on Twitter and Instagram at the K&D Exchange and subscribing to us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We hope you enjoy. Thanks for listening.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the K&D Extra. And I believe that apologies are in order for our regular listeners. Okay, let me break it down. On Tuesday of this week, so that would have been the 9th of November, we were going to record Loyal Kana's Not Drowning But Waving. Not Waving But Drowning album. We were going to record that exchange. And when we were recording it before the Tuesday drop, we encountered a whole raft of problems, technical issues in that. And instead of sort of persevering through it and trying to edit through it, we actually both sort of lost our minds and thought, nah, man, we're not going to do that. It just kind of sets a dampener on the mood, and it doesn't really, it just doesn't really flow after that, right? So we are looking at trying to find a new way to record our exchange episodes and record it well and make it easy to edit, etc., etc. So while we figure that out in the background, we will definitely come back to you ASAP with more regular episodes. But next week we hope to have the Loyal Kana episode out. But yeah, I apologize for that, and I know this is late as well because I was meant to have this recorded and done and uploaded yesterday, the 11th of November 21, but I've been busy personally and professionally. Like, work has been, you don't even want to know, but you didn't come here to hear me moan about that. And family life is busy, man. 2 kids, so, you know what I mean? You're going to get episodes when you go get it. But yeah, that's what we're working on at the moment. Also, just a little bit of interaction from you lot. If you are listening to this and you happen to know a good method of recording 2 people virtually for a podcast, please let me know. I have a few ideas, but you got to pay like some money, and we're already paying enough at the moment as it is for our podcast hosting and things like that. We're not getting paid for our episodes or anything, so we do this because we love it. But yeah, anything free, because, taking stuff and not giving it back kind of makes you a pirate. Oh, and so does drinking rum as well. But with that aside, yeah, I was meant to record this yesterday. I didn't have time. So you're getting it a day late, but you are getting it. And without any further ado, I am reviewing one of my favorite rock albums. It's Korn's 3rd studio album, by the name of Follow the Leader. It was released on the 14th of August 1998, which really makes me feel absolutely ancient, because you know what? I was just about to spoil it. No. So how I'm going to do this album review? I'm not going to go track by track. I'm going to go into a little bit of history with how did this black guy start liking Korn? Then I'm going to go into what I don't like about the album, what I do like about the album, and why I would recommend it to other people, and also other memories attached to this band and especially this album. But yeah, without further ado, why do I like Korn? Why does this humble black man like Korn? And it was rather fortuitous. One of my oldest friends, his name's John, and if you listen to any of our stereo episodes when we were recording on there, if you listen to them, you might hear him in a couple of those episodes, like chiming in with his comments. John is a lovely, lovely human being, and we bonded over our love of computer games and movies. But more so than that, I was about 11 or 12 years old. So I was in year 7 with him. He was in my class. And he said, "Do you like Street Fighter?" Of course I do. I've got a Sega Mega Drive. Like, what are you talking about, bro? I've got a Sega Mega Drive at this point. Every weekend I'm bumping Street Fighter 2. Every weekend. Okay, there's that. Streets of Rage 2. um, Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic and Knuckles, Thunder Force 4. By the way, it has one of the best 8-bit soundtracks I've ever heard. Thunder Force 4, trust me, one of the best games I've ever played, right? But anyway, of course I know Street Fighter, John. What are you talking about? He said, "I've got a movie." "What do you mean you got a movie?" I've got a manga." "John, what's a manga?" "Oh, it's like animated. It's like a cartoon." Sign me up, rude boy. Except this manga was like an 18 or was it a 15? Can't remember. And we are obviously underage and shouldn't be watching it. He said, "I can lend it to you." That weekend, I was like, "Yeah, man, John, lend me that video." And seeing your video game characters brought to life in a manga style that was just so, I'd never heard anything like it. I'd never seen anything like it. The voice acting was on point. The animation was on point. The story, I loved it at the time, and it was just such a it was like being punched in the face with manga. It was like, pay attention. And from that day, it began a love affair with manga that I've always had, and now anime. And to be honest, as I've gotten older, I don't watch as much as I used to. But for a big chunk of my life, I was up to date. Love Dragon Ball Z, Ninja Scroll, Dominion Tank Police, 3 Boy 3 Eyes, Wicked City. I mean, I could rattle. I think I said Ninja Scroll already. Yeah, I could rattle off loads. Oh, Akira, like one of the best ones ever. Ghost in the Shell. So, oh my goodness, Guyver. But yeah, as you can tell, I was a child of the 90s, and that was in the zeitgeist. So definitely, definitely loved it. Anyway, how does this tie into Korn? Well, at the end of the movie, Ryu says to Ken, like, I'll see you around, buddy. Like, I'm off. And then as the credits are rolling, you've got you've got this highway, and Ryu's walking down the highway away from the camera, so you're facing his back, right? And then midway through the credits, there's a lorry that sort of like just drives down the road. And it switches to Ryu turning around, and it's M. Bison, the baddie, and he's driving the car, laughing maniacally. And then, as Ryu's about to jump and kick him, the credits stop, and it's like a freeze frame. And then you just hear this, "Are you ready?" And then it goes into Korn's song "Blind," which is off I think it's their first song on their first album. And it's heavy. It goes into the video as well, and it's gritty and grainy, and it's like this awesome song. And I was really into it. I really like that song. I've always liked it, and it grabbed me at 11 or 12 years old. And the thing that cemented my love for this band, and I always kept an eye out for them, was right at the end of the Blind video. They have this like outro, and it's basically just this hip hop beat, this kind of early 90s hip hop beat just played live. And it always stuck with me because I've always listened out for that hip hop element in every Korn song in all of their albums. And that's why I loved their second album and also this album, because you can really hear hip hop underneath the really heavy low guitars. And yeah, they began this love affair with this band anyway. And why do I want to talk to you guys about this album? I think this album is the culmination of everything that preceded it. So with the original album Korn and then Life is Peachy, they were really, really concentrating on the heaviness, the darkness, the kind of more moody sounds. But I think that this album was the culmination of all that experimentation, as well as influencing um, as well as listening to those influences of hip hop and then blending it into a really well constructed, well thought out album. The one of the criticisms that I would have of the first two albums is that they're good in parts. I think they're quite patchy. There are things that I really like and really dislike across both. However, on this album, there's more I like as opposed to more that I dislike. So the the dial is always turned up to I like this, and one of the criticisms that I do have about this album is I think that in its scope they try to overreach and do too much. So on songs like Children of the Corn featuring Ice Cube, on BBK, on All in the Family featuring Fred Durst, and Cameltosis, I think that they try to lean into a weird kind of hip hop, yeah, acidy hip hop, boom bap kind of thing, but it doesn't really go with the aesthetic that they've created for themselves. I think that they really lean into the hip hop side of things on songs like Reclaim My Place, and especially like with Got the Life and um, Freak on the Leash. I think that when they play within themselves and play within their own sort of capabilities, the hip hop just naturally comes out. Whereas when I think it's forced and I just don't think that it works as well. I don't know. I can't really put into words what my problem is with those songs. And those are songs I actively dislike. I Every time I listen to the album, I will hear the intro. I'll skip without fail. And that might be me being unfair to those songs, but I don't necessarily think that they're very good. They don't capture my um, attention or anything like that. Um, and as much as I don't mind Fred Durst, like that All in the Family song, he just comes across so whiny. And Jonathan Davis, the lead singer of Korn, is he's very tall and like lanky and just got this roar. And whereas when you got Fred Durst, you couple that with Fred Durst and that kind of "you hate me," you're just a whiny little cat, like next to a flipping pit bull. Like, it's just, I don't think the dynamic works. And same with the Ice Cube song as well. But those are pretty much the only two sort of bitchy things that I'm going to say about this album. Otherwise, what do I like about this album? And like, what are the memories attached to it? Why do I like it so much? I mean, this album I listened to as throughout uni. I would bump this album when I was studying all the time. When I was walking, there were certain songs that are walking songs that I'm like, yeah, amazing. Um, when it comes to the sonics of the album, let's start with the sonics. I think this album sounds absolutely fantastic. It's the best sounding album that had come out at that time. So out of the first three, so the original Korn, Life is Peachy, and this one is miles ahead in terms of production value. Something seems to have changed in '98 where bands became like crystal clear. And what I love about the overall sonics of the album is in your right ear you will have Monkey, one of the guitarists, and in your left ear you will have Head, and then mixed right in the middle is Fieldy with his bass. And what I love about Fieldy, and having seen him play live, Fieldy, for a bass player, one of the challenges is how do you stick out from the guitar crowd, right? And it's hard enough for some bass players to stand out when competing against one guitarist, but when you're competing against two, like let's say what bands with two guitarists? Flipping hell! Oh my gosh, I can see him. James Hetfield, Master of Puppets. Uh, why have I forgotten what they called? With Kirk Hammett. They're not. This is how you know I'm old. What are they called? Metallica. I didn't look it up. I promise. Metallica. When you look at them, I found that their bass player, I think the first bass player they had was Jason Newsted, and he was pretty good. He was pretty handy. But the second bass player they got was the guy with the long hair. I think he's like Latino. Can't remember. But I found that he didn't stick out from the crowd or do anything different. It's very, very difficult for a bass player to stand out, especially when the bass is, you typically play one note at a time, whereas guitarists play, typically power chords, and they could do solos and hit the high ends and hit the high pitched sonics, right? But with Fieldy, I feel that he's like, all right, I'm a bass player, that's cool, but his effect that he has on his K5 bass guitar is it's so cool in the sense that he's so percussive in the way that he plays. I mean, how many bands do you know that like have a slap bassist that literally, when I went to see him live, his bass playing replaced my own heart's need to beat. So my heart was just sitting there not beating, and then it was just waiting for Fieldy just to play his bass, and it was just like, oh, don't worry. My heart was like, yeah, don't worry. Like I'll let Fieldy do the beating for me. It's amazing. You feel him in your chest when you see him live, and especially on this album as well. I really found that he came into his own because he's so percussive and he's right in the middle of the mix. You can't escape him. Whether he's playing full bass, so absolutely no high end whatsoever, like on Freak on the Leash, in those verses, it's just pure bass and it's just low, low, low end, and it sounds amazing. But then when you get to like songs like Reclaim My Place, where he's slapping basically all the way through, he really keeps the pace. He really sets aside the sets himself aside from the two guitarists, which I think is really difficult to do. But he does a lot in the sense that he keeps the low end actual bass notes playing while adding the percussion, while standing out from the crowd. He really is, for me, I started off playing bass, he really is the MVP of this band for me. Now, I'm going to get to the drums. Dave Silvera comes from a punk background. He obviously loves hip hop, so you can really, really hear that throughout his productions, throughout his work on this album. The one thing that I would say about Dave Silvera, though, is that he comes across to me quite one note, and so a lot of the albums that Korn do are very much in the same kind of beats and the same kind of pacing. I don't really remember where he's. I think maybe that comes on Issues, if that was one that he drummed on. But there's like quite a switch up in the way that he plays. It's quite fast paced, but everything here is like slower. It's deliberate. It's it does the job basically. And then Jonathan Davis is the singer. Cuts right through everything, permeates in and out of the music, floats over the top when he needs to, gets low and dirty with the bass drums and the bass guitar, and I think that he's the perfect frontman for this band because they are very weird. He's a very, very strange individual, but this sound is also incumbent, I think, on the drugs that they were doing. So I think that Brian Head Welsh, one of the guitarists, I think it was meth that he was on. Jonathan Davis, alcohol abuse and drugs as well. So they had a lot of problems. But I do think that kind of drug abuse kind of lent itself to creating an album like this. This album stands way apart from any other bands that have come out. I like the Deftones. Korn sound different to them. Korn sounded completely different to everything. It was like, that's the Korn sound. And another thing that's laced in this album, and which adds to the unique sound and the uniqueness of the material, is actually the lyrics and lyricism of Jonathan Davies. He layers a horrible trauma in amongst this music that is so dark at times and so bleak and heavy. He layers his traumas and things that he's gone through throughout this album, and he's so honest in the way that he delivers very, very harsh very harsh messages in a really short and abrasive way, yet it has so much depth in the way that he will say things. I don't know if that really covers what I'm trying to say. I just think that there's a lot of depth when it comes to this band. And the one thing, I mean, throughout this album, the lyrics just stick out like an absolute sore thumb, so for example, on Dead Bodies Everywhere, when he's talking about, hey, a sick mum with a fucked dad dealing with your life, dead bodies everywhere, he's not talking about the literal dead. He's talking about the living dead, with people living with ailments and substance abuses and neglect and things like that. It has such a horrible effect on you that you're living your life, but are you really living if you've got this heavy weight on your shoulders? And I think that this permeates that is a quick example of exactly what Jonathan is sort of going through. In songs like Reclaim My Place, very much a case of, hey, I've been bullied, I've been treated terribly throughout my entire life. My parents weren't really that good to me. I've had a really rough time. And yet that's him just saying, you know what? Hey, I need to reclaim myself, as a person and as a spiritual individual. I need to be a human being and I need you to see me. And I think that again is something that permeates throughout this album, is that his need to be seen and his need to be loved and validated. I was going to save this for the end because I think this is my favorite song on this album is Pretty, but I'll talk about it now. Because of the lyricism and also the subject matter, it's a really heavy song in tone and also nature, but also musically it's a really heavy song. It starts off super heavy with one of my favorite sort of intros that Korn have ever done, and I love the verse, but the chorus for me always gets me. Now there is a bit of a backstory with regards to this song in particular. So, in his early life, Jonathan Davies he worked in a morgue or a mortician's mortuary. Is that the word? And he recalls this one case where this baby who had died through neglect and abuse had come in. And so, what had happened to him is he started to have nightmares about it and basically got PTSD from it. And this song, Pretty, is an ode to that child. And the chorus is one of my favorite choruses in rock. It lives rent free in my head. I do think about this song a lot because of the horrible nature of what happened to this poor kid. And it's the way that he says, I see your pretty face smashed against the broken floor. No, smashed against the bathroom floor. What a disgrace. Who do I feel sorry for? And when he talks about who do I feel sorry for, he's obviously talking about the poor child. He's also talking about himself, because he then, further on in the chorus, says, not again. This is a real crime. What a pretty face. And when he says again, not again, it's him reliving the image of that. It stayed with him and scarred him so deeply that he had to write a song about it. And I think that it's my favorite song on the album. I think it's got the most meaning, and it's something that when I first heard the song, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And he will go into detail in the lyrics as to what actually happened to this kid. And then you hear the pain and the honesty and the truthfulness in the chorus. And special shouts out to Head, who does the backing vocals in the choruses, and it just sounds amazing. It just brings this amazing sort of tribute to this child like to life, and I just think it's a really I think it's a brilliant song, and is probably the jewel in the crown that is this album. But yeah, I mean, Korn, they come with the darkness. And when I say the darkness, I mean the heavy kind of tones, the heavy kind of subjects that you don't really want to think about. Especially in their early stuff. Like there's parental stuff that they talk about, or that Jonathan talks about, but he talks about being bullied. There's a song called Clown on the first album, which is one of my favorite Korn songs as well. But the brutality of what he's gone through is brought so effortlessly through the music that you kind of identify with it. And I find that with songs like Pretty, I've never witnessed anything like that. And I think, just even talking about it, my immediate reaction to that is outrage, moral outrage. But what does that do to a person? And I think through that song, and when I say what does that do to a person, I mean, what does that do to a person who's witnessed something like that, you know? And I think that it's just one of those things where music and art is able to bridge a reality gap. You haven't seen it with your own eyes, but you can live it vicariously through the artist that is delivering the music. Um, but yeah, I mean, whew, now that I've gotten that one off, because that is a pretty heavy subject, I must admit. Um, I'm just trying to think, what else do I love about this album? I love Jonathan's weirdness. I don't know if anybody like knows, but he does this like weird, like growly orc kind of talk thing. And he does it in the song Seed, and he does it in Freak on the Leash. It's like he does this kind of weird thing that he does. I don't know. I look, if you've listened to Korn, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. But it works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. And one final thing I think that I'll say about this album is I think that I really enjoy the direction that it starts going off in towards the end of the album. I think this is a well constructed album. I think that there are sort of pace issues for me in the middle, but it does pick up towards the end. But in the song, it's called My Gift to You. It basically lays the groundwork for the next album because the next album is very much in the same vein as this song. And it's very, very like big and just big and heavy. I can't really explain it any more than that. I mean, one of the uniqueness, one of the things that make Korn so unique is the guitarists use 7-string guitars and they just tune them right down. And then you got Fieldy who uses a 5-string bass, and they all play like Ibanez instruments because they're blatantly sponsored by it. But they have a particularly harsh, brutal sound and stuff. So I think that they were sort of mixing and experimenting and just seeing what sound worked for the next album, because each Korn album is very, very distinct in its sound and in its conception. And this one, I think, is a real sweet spot in the first 5 albums because it really does tie everything together. And as I said at the top of this review, it's just such a, I don't know, it's such a great middle point for the first 5 albums of this band. And then they end the album with a tiny bit of comedy featuring Cheech and Chong, I think, in Earache My Eye. It's a silly song and quite a nice way to end. It's just kind of, we've had an album full of heavy themes. Let's just have a bit of a laugh with these two idiots sort of thing, you know? But yeah, I mean, this album for me, I don't know if I've done it justice. I've probably forgotten loads of things that I wanted to talk about in this review, but as a holistic thing, I mean, this band they were really, really cool, and they do belong in the in the 90s and the early 2000s. I don't really, they sort of lost me a good decade ago, but hey ho, each to their own. Like, if you still like them, cool. But you know, I do remember this band. They were hugely, hugely influential on me growing up, and especially when I was at uni, and just listening to their albums and listening to the way in which you could play such like simple riffs. Like, none of it is particularly difficult to accomplish, but it is really, really in how you blend it all together. And they really did have a special sort of bond. And also, like, one thing is, I wish I'd seen them in like '98 live, you know, because they were a force. And you just watch YouTube videos of them and it's like, my goodness me. But when I saw them, Dave Silvera, the drummer, had left, and Head had also left because I think he converted to Christianity, but he was also like trying to stay sober, and there were loads and loads of band issues, so he left. So when I saw Korn, it was kind of like, it was more like Orn, because there were 2 of them missing. They were still really, really good live. It was good to see Jonathan like do his thing live, and Fieldy is just a force live, and Monkey just doing his thing really. But it lacked that kind of youthful, raw energy that they had. But you know, that's got nothing to do with this album. That's just more my relationship with these artists really. But yeah, I mean, this album, I mean, should I give it a score? I mean, I don't know. It gets a 7.5 out of 10, I think, or yeah, 7.5, I think, because it has gone down because of the order of the album. I think that I think it's their most complete in terms of sound and experimentation. However, I think the pacing is a bit iffy, especially when it gets to songs like 5, 6, and 7. Yeah, 5 and 6, yeah, Children of the Corn and BBK, and then track 7 is Pretty, and that's really good, and then track 8 is All in the Family, and I'm like, no, that's really poor. And then they come in with a banger, which is Reclaim My Place at number 9, and that's a banger. So it does get a bit iffy in the middle for me. However, it is a really well constructed record. If you are somebody who hasn't listened to it before, I mean, I would go in, just expect heavy guitars, just expect weirdness. I think there's something for everybody. Hip hop heads would find something in there. I think everybody will find something in this album if you're open to it. I mean, some people can't get past the heavy guitars or the screaming or anything like that. Some people can. I just think that, try and open yourself up to some, you know what I mean? But yeah, man, it's really cool. But I would definitely, I mean, like for a top 5, it's easy. It's on Freak on the Leash, Dead Bodies Everywhere, Pretty, and Reclaim My Place. Those are the top 5, like easy. I still play those songs. I bump them songs to this day. But anyway, I think I have rambled on and ranted enough. And I sincerely hope you've enjoyed this episode and this review. I wasn't going to go track by track because what would be the point? I think there's way more to say about this band than even I've reviewed. But yeah, if you are still with me, thank you so much for listening. Again, apologies for not having an episode out earlier on this week. Technical issues. We'll get over it. Yeah, and I need to stop saying and like, and so I'm trying my best to also do that. But that's podcasting talk. I need to talk to myself about that. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you're all well, and I hope that everyone you love is well as well. We're living in some strange times. I don't know if you saw, I saw this YouTube video, just as a quick aside, this YouTube video of this guy, and he was driving down the road, and he looked up at the sky, and there was a bird that was flapping its wings, but was like stuck in the air. So I don't know if it's legit, but it looked pretty legit to me. Strange times are happening, guys, so keep safe out here. The world is moving booky, but you know what I mean. We just try and keep it moving and keep each other safe. So yeah, that's enough from me. It's late. I'm going to get this uploaded right now. So yeah, take it easy and peace.